During my first year of priesthood, next to my ordination, of course, what I looked forward to the most was celebrating the Triduum, one of the shortest but the most beautiful liturgical seasons of the entire calendar year in the church. I got to learn a lot about them when I served as a master of ceremonies at my home parish at St. Jude the Apostle in Baton Rouge. And so, being signed at Christ the King at LSU, I was looking forward to celebrating with the students I got to know, those being received into the church, and just the beauty of everything that surrounds it. Of course, to get there, you have to go through Lent. So I'm looking forward as well to my first Lent as a priest with all of, practicing everything I've learned through seminary, trying to bring that to the people of God. Well, right before Lent, during the Mardi Gras break, I was able to go on a quick vacation with some friends and, try snow skiing for the first time in Utah. Let's just say I was not my expectation to break my leg, which happened on Lundi Gras. And so really, all that I had planned was shattered. And truly, as one of my uncles put it, you decided to give up walking for Lent. And I did. But besides that, it really impacted my priesthood because really, I couldn't do what I thought my priest was about, was celebrating the sacraments, was celebrating Mass, being present to people. And so really, that brought me down a lot because I defined my priesthood by what I did, rather than ultimately, who is my relationship with? And I finally came to that realization as I was recovering at home at my parents' house, that my priesthood, and ultimately who I am, is not based off of what I do, but who my relationship is with, Jesus Christ and God. And I think maybe that's a good way to look at all that we're going through, and that's helped me process what we're experiencing now as a church and as a world, that we are being deprived in so many ways of what we're used to, what we want to do, has caused us to be unsettled. And I think that brings a lot of confusion for people, a lot of angst. I know a lot of people are going through many different things, but also spiritually, that we're longing for something that we got so used to, how it defines us, how it defines our weekend, how it defines ultimately everything that I do. That we can't even now go to church. We can't worship the way that we're used to. And so that kind of brings this kind of unsettledness in our lives of where we are going. And I use that word unsettled because what really kind of brought that to more focus for me was the special, extraordinary Urbi et Orbi blessing that Pope Francis did on Friday, March 27th. And I have some things on our website, and we'll be sharing it hopefully this weekend a little bit more. But this is something that was unprecedented for the Pope to do. What really stood out to me was that he did it in St. Peter's Square. It was raining. And from there, he went up to the portable altar they usually set up for outdoor celebrations, masses, general audiences. And it showed him walking up by himself in a completely empty St. Peter's Square. And if you look at this at any other time, here's a man just going up, proclaiming these words to nobody. But that symbolism, along with his homily, shows so much that I think that we're going through. That this time has caused us truly to be unsettled and questioning, where is the Lord? Where am I going? What's happening? But ultimately we remind ourselves as he does, I am here. Why are you afraid? And ultimately, I am here to restore you and help you. So along with all the physical things that are going on in our world, all the economic, all the psychological, all the things that we are going through and processing, let us now focus on, for now, the spiritual side of what's happening. And how we can use the readings this weekend to remind ourselves ultimately what's most important. Our relationship with the Lord and what he's trying to do, but also help us to see. The very first reading comes from the book of the prophet Ezekiel. Here is a prophet, a priest and prophet, speaking to those who are in exile. They're in exile because of how they turned themselves away from the Lord. Now they're deprived of their worship. They're deprived of the temple where they only thought that's where the Lord can be, and that is the only place that they can worship. And so now being taken away from their homeland, being even taken away from their worship, how down they became. But what is Ezekiel saying from the Lord to them? He says what passes what we call now the dry bones from Ezekiel chapter 37. He says, from God to his people, O my people, I will open your graves and have you rise from them. This is my promise to you. And ultimately, he's having us rise from our own tombs, maybe with this time away from the busyness of our life, all the activities we do, being deprived of what we think is important. We're now being refocused on what is more important. Maybe it's my relationship with my spouse, my family, being home, being more present, and maybe even a new way now, worshiping at home. That just as much as we long to come back to Mass, to be before our Lord in usual worship that we're kind of accustomed to, now we have to adapt to it, but reminding ourselves our Lord is calling us out of maybe what we're comfortable with, being unsettled, and following Him. And I think that's a great way to look then at that beautiful reading in our Gospel today, the raising of Lazarus from the grave. It's a reading that many of you probably are familiar with at funerals, and I know I've used it quite often. Because I love how in it, Martha, who we're very familiar with Martha and Mary from the Gospel of Luke, we're always challenged to be more like Mary rather than Martha. But I like this passage in that Martha is honest. She goes before the Lord and expresses her angst and saying, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would have not died. And the same thing is happening to us right now with everything going on. That maybe we need to be honest, Lord, you're depriving me of what I'm used to, maybe my comfort, my safety net, all these things. But look at her example as well, that along with that angst and looking at just maybe the physical side of everything, she looks at the spiritual side as well and makes this wonderful profession of faith, saying to Lord, also, but even now I know that what you ask of God, God will give you. And ultimately that profession that hopefully we can take as well. Because from there, our Lord knows what we need. He knows our longing. He knows maybe what we're stuck in, or maybe how we have deprived ourselves from His grace. And how the beautiful phrase that comes a little bit later in this, I think it's John chapter 11, verse 35 or 36. The shortest sentence in all probably of scriptures in the New Testament, but most powerful. Jesus wept. How He wept at the death of His friend, but also just like how His friend is in the tomb and dead at the moment. Maybe looking at us and how we are on our own death, maybe spiritually, maybe trapped in something, rather than being truly open to Him. And so that's what this Lenten journey, this journey that you and I are still on, even amongst all of this that's going on in the world, we are still in Lent and maybe united in a special way with this season more than ever. What He desires for us is to come out of that tomb. Just like He prophesied through Ezekiel to the people of Israel, and how He says to them even now, to those around the tomb where Lazarus is, take away the stone. And saying, Lazarus, come out. And He's saying to me, Matthew, come out of your own grave. And to each of you calling you by name, come out of your grave. And trying to renew us. And that's what we see in all through this Lenten journey of how He's trying to renew us. To say, I know you thirst, to the woman of the well, giving us the water that will truly quench our thirst. To the one born blind, to now be able to see. And here, now to even those who we think everything is lost or dead. He's saying, no, I am calling you out and giving you something better. And maybe that's what we now need to focus ourselves on in these last 2 weeks, preparing ourselves for Holy Week in the Triduum. And yes, it will be different for everyone, even for myself. Even after I broke my leg, I was able to return just in time for the Triduum. I couldn't still walk, but I was still able to participate and be there. And how that reminded me truly what our faith is about and the importance of it. And so now our Lord is inviting you and me to walk with him a little more closely. Drink from that fountain that renews us. Be open your eyes to see something greater. Maybe that's what this time of period is giving us, a chance to finally slow down and look and realize what grave that we are in and where we are with our relationship with the Lord. But he's saying, come out of it, follow me. And I kind of end my homily with those words that kind of speak to that as well. Towards the very end of that very first long paragraph in today's reading, note who speaks. It's Thomas, also called Didymus, whom we labeled as the doubting Thomas, whom we hear about in a few weeks during Divine Mercy Sunday. But note the words he speaks today, and very powerful for you and for me as we now prepare to next week and go into Holy Week in these remaining 2 weeks. Let us also go to die with him. Saying to the disciples, you and to me, all right, let us now go journey with our Lord, to die to ourselves and what we're comfortable with, and maybe with the things of this world that distract us from following the Lord. Let us go to die with him, but rise with a renewed heart, a new spirit, as much as St. Paul says in that letter today to the Romans, chapter 8. Please read it when you get a chance. That the one who raised Christ from the dead will give life to your mortal bodies also, through his Spirit dwelling in you. That is our Lord's gift and what he wants us to receive. That is my prayer for all of us as we continue this journey through Lent. May God bless your daily journey with him.